Good morning. I'm talking to Paul Donohue of the Brooks Group in North Carolina. Good morning, Paul.
Good morning. How are you doing, John?
I'm doing fine, and it's a pleasure talking to you. I'm looking forward to this for some time, not just because you're a well-known national speaker within mortgage circles, and you have certainly a lot of expertise in that area over many years, but also because you're participating in Sales Talk, one of our products, and it's a very select group. We have very few people, and they've been vetted. But in addition to that, you had sent me a paper that I've read 3 or 4 times. I was very impressed. I know it's going to be published. And I wanted to talk about it today because I think the subject matter is so important. I was, even off tape, I was very impressed with this. And it's called Create Distinction or Face Extinction. And the thing that I liked about it was the fact that it really kind of hones in on some of the fundamental changes that are taking place today. But before we get into that, I happen to know that you're a well-known speaker among mortgage groups throughout the country, and you do coaching individually at times and more importantly for organizations. But I wonder if you just talk just a little bit about your background and some of the services that you offer, and then we're going to kind of get right into it.
Sure. Thanks, John. I was a building contractor building high-end custom-end homes for 10 years, and I transitioned out of the building business into the mortgage lending business, went to work for a mortgage broker and was originating loans up in Roanoke, Virginia, and then got promoted through that and headed up a large mortgage brokerage shop in North Carolina with about 210 employees working in 36 states, and we were generating about 500 to 600 loan applications per day. And then out of that experience, I really wanted to focus more on the individual customer needs and started a company called MoneyNet Mortgage Planning Services back in 1989. And since then have been operating and originating on a daily basis and have originated over 3,000 mortgage loan applications myself personally. And of course our company with several loan officers have generated over 10,000 mortgage loan applications. And so my background is from the loan origination end of the industry.
Mm-hmm. I think that's important because in today's environment, you get speakers and coaches, and some of them are very, very good. I mean, I get enraptured listening to Zig Ziglar. I have to tell you, 2 hours later, I'm not sure I can remember too much of it, but while I'm there, it's a profound experience. But you do have that experience within the industry that I think is very valuable today. And also, you've associated yourself with the Brooks Group, and Bill Brooks, of course, is one of the great nationally known speakers. And so anyway, why don't we get on to the topic at hand today, which is create distinction or face extinction. The thing that and I have to say this right up front, that impressed me, not only the quality of the article itself, which is being published within a week in Mortgage Broker magazine, if I remember, but there were some profound questions, I think, at the start of it, and the sentence that got me is, how does this relate to you? And then a little later in the article, why should the customer choose you? And I thought that kind of focused on it quite well, and the fact that there's a difference between strategy and tactics, and even though that was not in your article per se, I thought I'd start off by asking you the difference between strategy and tactics, and why one is more important than the other today.
Well, there's so many skills that it takes to succeed in the mortgage lending industry today, and you have the operational work that a person's got to do, how to process out a loan and how to fill out an application, and then you have what is considered the more tactical skills, like how do you sell, how do you present yourself, how do you build those relationships, how are you building your networks, when do you bring in your manager to help you in a sale, how do you marshal the resources resources within your organization. Those are the tactical, those are the daily and weekly and monthly tactical skills that a person really needs to hone and to succeed today. There's another level of skill, though, that really does need to be developed to deal with today's marketplace, and that is the strategic skills. The strategic skills are more philosophical and value-based than operational in nature. And when a person today, a family, a prospect, a customer, is asking the all-important question that, with all of the competitive mortgage alternatives that I have available to me today, why would I choose your company and why would I allow you to originate my next mortgage? What they're really asking is, what is it that you stand for? What value are you bringing to the table? Yeah, you have a mortgage loan, fine. You have mortgage products, great. You probably have good service and good rates. But what am I going to get out of it? And the customer is very concerned about those more strategic or philosophical questions. Even if it's not on a conscious level, the customer is looking for value. And the strategic and philosophical skills that I'm talking about really answer and go to what value you deliver to your chosen market niche.
But it's something that I think loan officers individually and also companies, they kind of overlook that aspect, don't you think? I mean, that's my impression from even doing some of the interviews that I did.
Mm-hmm. Well, our industry traditionally has been so transactionally oriented.
Exactly.
So accustomed to spending our time, and when I'm talking about time, I mean our mental creative time, thinking about how am I going to do more loans? How am I going to get more sales? And it's very short term. It's a very short view of things. When I'm talking about a strategic philosophy, I'm talking about the direction, purpose, and mission of your operation. What is it that you're selling? What is your philosophical positioning that is going to differentiate you from every other mortgage broker or mortgage banker that's in your marketplace? And once you know that, once you begin answering the question of what do we stand for, what values, what philosophy are we going to position ourselves on and build our reputation off of, then you begin to communicate that in your marketing pieces, and your marketing takes on a deeper message than if it's just transactionally oriented.
But I think preceding that, you had mentioned in this article, I kind of, if I remember, picked up a couple different things. You had mentioned that the not only the industry has changed, but the marketplace has changed, and the customer and family has changed. And I wondered if you go over that. What has kind of triggered this?
Yes, really, we all know, and anybody who would be listening to this understands that the marketplace has changed. We're really, everything that we're seeing in the marketplace today are exhibiting signs of a mature marketplace. And the industry, of course, has changed through regulation and technology and the consolidation of lenders and products. The industry has changed dramatically. But I think probably the most significant transformation that we're at the effect of today is the customer family has changed so dramatically, and that, of course, is where the business is conducted ultimately.
Oh, absolutely.
And so that's where we need to have our focus. But basically, in a mature marketplace like we have today in the mortgage industry, everybody's products and services all look the same to the customer. There's no differentiation. It's not a product-distinct marketplace. It's not a service-distinct marketplace, although these are important. You've got to have a good base of products. You have to have excellent service. And you got to have good price. The problem is they're not distinct anymore. It used to be that you could sell product and you had this huge bevy of products that nobody else had, and you could create some distinction there. And then when that became commonplace, then we moved to service. Well, I've got better service than my competition, but actually today anybody who's surviving today is going to have good service, and the level of service that's being delivered today, I find, is pretty good around the industry. It's like bathing. You better bathe. It's expected. It's just not a differentiation anymore.
Right, and I'd like to add a point here in this because because I've done over 80 interviews, and I think I can add something to this equation in the sense that when I talk to the 80 people, the interviews I've done, I don't think I've done an interview where they have not talked about delivering customer service. And as you pointed out so well, loan officers today, especially your good ones, the ones I interview, they all are aware that you have to deliver good customer service. But the interesting part to that is of the 80 people maybe that I interviewed, perhaps 10 unintentionally, maybe subconsciously, brought up the fact, you can even hear it when they talk, they'll say, and yet you need to offer good customer service going in. Customers expect that today, and I think that's kind of a validation of what you're saying.
Right. Your strategic networking partners, be they realtors or CPAs or whoever they may be, or your customers, your family customers, they're so accustomed to good service today that it's no longer a distinction. You better have it, but it's not going to be a competitive advantage anymore. Either is price. It's not a price-distinct marketplace. I believe that if somebody comes to you for rate, they're going to leave you for rate. And everybody's got good rates, you know, and so it's just not a differentiation anymore. So if it's not a product-distinct marketplace or a service or a price-distinct marketplace, then the question remains, what is driving the marketplace today? What are the concerns? What are the things that a loan originator or a mortgage banker is going to have to concern themselves now and in the future? And I submit that it's a value-distinct marketplace.
Well, you use that word value distinction, and in terms of you say something I thought was rather profound, and that is if you can't identify how you're distinct, then you don't have a distinction.
Right. You have to be able to create your value-distinct philosophy and create a very succinct and compelling message that delivers that differentiation into your marketplace. Your unique value distinction is the perceived value that you deliver intrinsically because of your strategic philosophy, your company's value system, and its authentic voice. It's who you are as a company and as a professional originator that is going to be the package that you deliver into your marketplace and create a differentiation.
You know, I think this is going to have value for. I think that listeners out there, loan officers who are certainly executives, are going to understand exactly what you're saying when they listen to this. But with loan officers, I'm afraid there's going to be a disconnect here. You may agree or not agree with me. I think loan officers who are doing 15 or 20 million a year and up, they're going to immediately seize on this and understand exactly what you're talking about.
Absolutely.
But it kind of scares me a little bit that loan officers out there who were perhaps new, don't have that much experience, or are not that successful. I'm not so sure this isn't just going to go over their head when you talk about things like concepts. You know, sometimes people's eyes tend to glaze over. You know, give me the specifics, ma'am. But the fact of the matter is, I'm sorry.
No, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to barge in.
No, that's a dialogue.
Barge in there, but I actually think that the new loan officer has an advantage here because I believe it's the loan officer who's been in the business marginally, who's been transactional oriented, and who's been originating for 3 or 4 or 5 or 10 years, and they're struggling. I think that this new marketplace is going to challenge even some of the most successful loan originators that are out there. Now, the big ones that you're talking about, they already have a positioning that delivers value, and they already have a distinct philosophy of service and delivery that brings their business on a continual basis. But there's a large base of originators out there today who are groping and struggling and trying to understand what are they going to need to do going forward to create a continual flow of business. And I don't think what we're experiencing today is a business cycle at all. I think that we're in the midst of a market revolution, and that it's not going to cycle back, that you must change your sales and marketing strategies to respond to the emerging realities of our marketplace today. And it's for those people who are somewhat in the habit of a transactionally oriented relationship with their borrowers that are going to struggle. The new loan officer who's technologically savvy, that's open-minded to learn, I think is pretty well positioned to be open to these new ideas.
Well, I would parse the words here and would disagree with you to a slight extent. You're right. Perhaps they're positioned because they're more technically savvy and everything. On the other hand, they're inexperienced, and I do wonder whether new loan officers can listen to what you're saying, because it's so profound. And when you're talking philosophy, I just hope that they grasp the importance of it.
Let me give them something to hang their hat on, John, and this may help. The good news about a new loan officer or anybody who is in this business, we're all consumers too. So think about how you buy, okay? If a new loan officer is listening to this dialogue here and they're groping with what it is that we're saying, think about how you buy. Excuse me. Think about how a person would buy something. You're looking at the product and you're looking at the price, but you're really looking at the relationship. You're looking at the value in the relationship with the company that you're buying from. People are looking for a brand preference. People are looking for a sense of familiarity. We will buy from it. We will continually buy from an insurance agent who gives us good service that's familiar to us, that delivers value, and that we are comfortable with, much more readily than we would switch to a new company simply because of a small price differential. And so if you ask yourself, well, what is it that keeps me working with a particular person when I'm buying, you want to look at that and examine that and say, you know, there's some value underneath the relationship. That's what I'm really getting when I'm buying that insurance product. And if they can see that and understand that, then that's the way they want to position themselves as a mortgage professional, as an advisor, as a value-added source for information, for problem solving, as a family advisor. And if you can position yourself with that family and deliver that kind of value, you can understand very quickly that that's how a customer will buy from you. They're looking for value.
Yeah, there's something else that you said, too, that I thought was interesting a little later on, and that the most, and I'm going to give you a good example of that maybe a little later, that the most distinctive value is give your best and most authentic self to your customers. And you know, don't try and be a phony. Don't try and copy someone else 100%, you know, but be true to yourself first and foremost, and then pick and choose ideas that work. Try them. If they work, accept them, and if they don't, throw them away. But, you know, be true to yourself.
Absolutely. And the great news is that the typical profile of a loan originator is more entrepreneurial. They're very oriented to controlling their own destiny and reaping the rewards of their hard work. They're individualists. And so they understand this concept.
Yeah, I agree. Mm-hmm.
There's a dialogue going on in the marketplace. The most profound transformation that's taking place is with the customer family. There's the voices of the marketplace are authentic, and families are thirsty for excellence and real relationship. They're looking for a real relationship with somebody who will champion their cause, who will champion and be an advocate for their interests, and they can recognize that very quickly. People are attuned to smelling out a phony or somebody who's authentic, and it's really your most distinct positioning is to simply be at service. I think it's more about where your attention is and what your intentions are as you're going into the selling transaction more than anything else. And it's about not providing us service, but about being at service.
Well, what about in terms of companies? Maybe I'd like for you to talk a little bit about companies and their identity and how they can create this kind of value distinction, because there's a lot of executives that listen to this too.
Mm-hmm. Well, you know, you're either going to create distinction or face extinction. That's my belief going forward. And there's a couple things I would recommend to brokerage shops, banking firms who are attempting to create distinction and some sort of an identity in their community, in their marketplace. And there's a couple things I'd suggest. Number one is, first of all, do some soul searching. What is it that you are doing? What's your purpose in this business? Why are you doing this business? What's driving you? What is the message that your company delivers by its very nature, by its service. And you need to identify who you are. There's a self-discovery and a self-knowledge that goes along with that. And then there needs to be a philosophical position that your company stands on, and that you get buy-in. Everybody within your organization needs to buy into your message and your mission as a company, and what your purpose is, because that comes and we can get into that, but there needs to be a complete buy-in from everybody in the company of what the company is about, what they stand for, and what their purpose and mission is in the marketplace. And then I would recommend that rather than being all things to all people, to identify the parts of the marketplace that are most compatible with your philosophical position and your purpose in the marketplace. This is a micro-niched marketplace. And I'll give you an example of what I'm talking about. I heard this, Jim Pancero is a great speaker around the country, and in a talk that I heard, he gave this analogy that really says it quite well. He says, if I'm in a hotel and I go up to the concierge with an urgent look on my face and I go, I got to get some shoes. I forgot my shoes. That concierge cannot help you until he asks you one question. And that question is, what do you need the shoes for? Are you going to go hiking in the woods? Are you in a business trip? Are you going to go dancing? Are you going to go play basketball? What are you going to do? He cannot tell you what shoe store to go to and where to get them until you tell him what the purpose is. And the point is that it's become a micro-specialized marketplace, and our industry is full of people who have special knowledge. We have special knowledge because we're mortgage experts. But what I suggest is that company identify a specialty within that specialty of knowledge that we've got as mortgage originators that you want to focus on. Because by specializing and segmenting your marketplace, you immediately create perceived value as becoming an expert in a particular specialty. And I would recommend that you do that. I would much rather see a company market themselves very narrowly and then sell very deeply and broadly down into that very narrowly defined niche. I think that it's become a micro-specialized marketplace, and a company needs to position itself in order to create differentiation, and in order to create value, and in order to create distinction in this marketplace today.
You know who subscribes to that philosophy, and I think invalidates it very well too, is the former CEO of Crestar Mortgage, which, as you now know, is merged and is now SunTrust.
Yes.
And he was head of Crestar from '89 to '98. His name was Mark Smith. And there is, and I would encourage the listeners here, I'm sure they can go on the web and somehow get hold of it, but there's a series of articles. The first two have been published in Mortgage Banking magazine. The first one was in August of the year 2000. And in this, he basically explains how the same sort of things happen as a company, as you were talking about, and where their growth was slow, they become a bit complacent, and he recognized that the business was fundamentally changing. And what he did, and the results were just interesting. They grew in his period, I think, went from $3 to $19 billion in that period of time. In fact, the title of the article is 26 Compound, which means they were growing at a rate of 26% compounded, which was quite phenomenal. But what he really did is what you're talking about. They recognized the problem with the industry changing, with the internal culture, and he literally created a huge task force that broke everything down and into its components, and they all spent time figuring out what was the most important component to the customers and then ranking them. And then he did everything. He called it upside down management, where the president of the company really served the vice presidents, not the other way around. Vice presidents served the regionals, all the way down to the bottom level, where the loan officers were the servants of the customer. So he turned the whole organizational chart upside down. And
very wise in today's marketplace because of the conversations and dialogue and rapid communication that's happening in the marketplace. See, the biggest thing that's happened in the marketplace today is that the customer is in control. They've taken control and they're not going to give it back.
Exactly.
In today's marketplace, the customer is keenly interested in giving you permission to market to them, but at the same time, they've become very protective of their time and their attention, and they've become very resistant to our promotional, sales, and marketing efforts. And so the customer's got to give you permission to market to them today. And so it comes back to this whole thing of specializing. Every service, every mortgage company appeals more strongly to a certain defined group of people more than it appeals to everybody. And if you can focus in, and here's a way to say this, John, is that sometimes when you're attempting to communicate with a family, with a homeowner or a prospect, that customer is looking for, all right, you've got good service, you've got good products, you've got good rates, so what else do you have? So this is something that the customer is looking for, is where's the value going to come from? And you, as a loan officer, are going to have to communicate your value distinction in a very succinct and compelling way. And that customer is going to be listening for that. They want to make a real connection. And if the loan officer can concentrate more on connecting with their borrowers rather than trying to conquer them, I think they're going to position themselves as a better listener and as a problem solver, which is going to endear themselves to the customer. The customer is going to read it immediately, and they're going to pick up on the authenticity of your intention.
Yeah, one of the things I find in my interviews with very successful top producers is that they do understand this fundamental truth. I was quite amazed as I did all these interviews with the amount of loan officers in this group who clearly recognize that fact. And to give you a specific example, the amount of them that would concentrate on spending quality time with the client. Now, in a couple different ways. The most obvious one was if someone came in to do a loan app, most of in this grouping actually spent very little time inputting stuff on the 1003. They had gotten stuff before by faxes, told people what to bring in, a needs list, whatever. But when they came in, they focused an enormous amount of time in creating that relationship. The second example is people who did not even take their loan apps themselves. They would have an assistant do it. You would think that would contradict everything, but the reality of the whole thing was that they had spent a lot of time in pre-qualification meetings, upfront interviews before they actually did the app, in phone conversations, but in developing quality relationships with these people versus, as you might say, the technical aspects of, what's your Social Security number, where do you live, that kind of stuff. All of them recognize that that's not where it's at.
Well, here's a principle behind what you're saying there, John. A company, a mortgage firm, is going to succeed when a substantial number of people, a sufficient number of people, feel that their lives are really better because they've experienced your service. And it's all about positioning yourself as an advisor. All of my 3,000 mortgage loan transactions plus have all been taken in the homes of families across the state. I travel to their home, and I originate mortgage loans in people's homes, and I position myself as a planner. I position myself as a problem solver and as an internal advocate for that family. I want to be welcomed into the family as an internal advisor. And if you position yourself that way, you're apt to get the repeat business, you're apt to deliver real value, and you're certainly going to get the benefit of their endorsement and their referrals to their friends and family. And you're going to, if I'm a mortgage originator and we know that the family is going to have 5 to 7 mortgage loans in their lifetime, and I'm originating a mortgage loan, maybe the 4th one, it's incumbent upon myself to do everything I can to get 5, 6, and 7. And the way you position yourself that way is by being a value resource for that family.
You know who does? As a fellow named Duffy Gilligan, works in North Carolina. You probably know him.
Oh, I do. I know Duffy well. He's a friend of mine.
Oh, he is. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, then I guess you can validate what I'm going to say. He really picks up on this philosophy in the sense that everybody he takes a loan app, and you know, he does things differently and not by the book, and has no problem telling people exactly how he does and how he feels. But he's interesting in the sense that he believes that you need to take your clients when you do that loan and do just what you say, turn them into salespeople for you, so that they are not only coming back to you for the second, third, or fourth time, they're out there talking to their brothers and sisters and friends and whatever, in essence, literally bypassing realtors and going direct, which is really what your bottom line is with today's landscape, that people have to learn how to go more direct.
Absolutely. And, you know, what you're looking for, marketing is what you do before you meet your customer. Sales is the convincing that you do once you've gotten in front of them. And in my creating distinction or face extinction concept, it's about marketing and positioning and timing yourself into your marketplace. One of the things that I think is the biggest mistake that loan officers make is that they get so caught up in the selling process of what they want to have happen that they lose sight of what the customer really wants to have happen. And it's about focusing your attention on the needs and the desires and aspirations of your customer. And frankly, people have got to stop peddling product in this industry. We are so, like I said, transactionally oriented that we're so focused on our product and our service and our rate that we forget the fact that people don't really want a mortgage. That's not why they're coming to you. Nobody wants a mortgage. You know, the derivation of mortgage is death agreement. Now, try to sell that.
I guess more the Latin, right?
Can I get you a death agreement here? Nobody wants a mortgage. I don't want a mortgage. I don't want a mortgage. Who wants a mortgage? Nobody wants a mortgage. People want their problems solved. People want you to help them attain life's highest aim, their aspirations for their family. They want their dreams to come true. They don't really. The mortgage is simply a tool for allowing people to fulfill the promise of the American dream. And if we can get our eye off of that and focus, get our eye off the fact that what we're selling is not really a mortgage, but we're selling the fulfillment and the realization of a dream for that family, and focus on that. Focus on where the pain is, focus on where the needs are, and position yourself as a person who's going to deliver the solution and deliver the hopes and the aspirations of that family. Then you're going to endear yourself to that family, and you're going to be appreciated for the value you deliver.
Yeah, and you know, when you say something like that, I mean, it really does kind of take it down to the bottom fundamental line of bringing value. In all the interviews I do, as I have always said, people be sick of me ad nauseum saying it over and over, but it is the one profound statement that goes through all the interviews, and that is, it's a relationship business, and it's a business of creating relationships.
Well, I believe it's a business of creating brand preference. You see, there's no loyalty really out there. There's a misconception, I believe, that you can get customer loyalty. You know, in this lifetime, you're fortunate if your spouse and your dog are loyal to you. That's about it. Okay? That's about all you can expect.
And divorce rate's 50% too.
Right. So you're down to your pet. But I will tell you, if you can create brand preference, you know, if you can create a company preference, a relationship preference for you over your competition, that's, I believe, the best that you can hope for going forward. And how you do that, how you answer that question, listen, if I'm calling a customer cold and they say to me, listen, you're the third mortgage originator I've talked with in the last 2 weeks, why, with all the competitive mortgage alternatives that I have available to me, would I choose you to originate my next mortgage? You need to be able to answer that. That is it. That's a question they're asking is, listen, I know you got mortgages. I know you've got good service, but what else? What's in it for me? And that's what the customer is looking for.
You know, I had a great interview. I have to tell you, I normally don't talk about specific interviews. I had a great interview with a fellow named Greg Frost. And I believe last year he was the third top producer in units in the country. Did about almost 1,800 units, and he subscribes to exactly what you're talking about. We spent quite a bit of time talking about about how he says that if you want to be a really top producer like he is, you have to, first off, identify the community that you want to be in. For example, he works in Albuquerque. He said your community could be a subdivision of 500 homes. It could be a small county. It could be a city or whatever. He picked Albuquerque as his community. And then he went a step further, and he created a unique identity for himself and his company. And one of the ways that I happen to remember he did it that I kind of like, and that is he has devoted, he ticed himself. You know, you don't hear that word tice too much anymore, but he ties himself 10% of his gross earnings, and he uses that and spends it on advertising, whether it's on TV, the radio. For example, his picture. He told me that for the last 10 years, he has put his picture, and not some phony baloney studio picture, a very natural picture of the way he looks and dresses, which he thought was an important distinction, puts it on everything. Everything he sends out, faxes, it doesn't make any difference. He puts that same picture to a point now where he walks through Albuquerque, which is, 500,000, it's not a large city. People instantly recognize him. He has created a value distinction, an identity.
Well, that's one way to go. You can create celebrity for yourself in your local community, and I would recommend that highly. I have done quite a great deal of that in myself in my particular community too, so I subscribe to that. And the way I call it is that you create a market bowl. You have and with the database content management systems that we have today, you definitely, if you're going to be working in this industry today, you've got to have good technology where into this database, into this market bowl, you want to individualize your prospect profile. You want to understand, who is your, what is the profile of your best customer base, and you want to create a market bowl of these prospects, and then you craft your competitive edge into a powerful message, and you deliver that into your market bowl, and you create familiarity by giving them continual impressions of what your message is and what your value is. And over time, the idea is to position yourself in front of your buyer, your borrower, your customer when they're ready to buy. And your marketing positions yourself so that when they are ready to buy, when they raise their hand and say, okay, it's time, you're the mortgage company of preference when I'm ready. And that's all about marketing, that's all about positioning, that's all about branding your identity into your market bowl.
Mm-hmm. I'd like to kind of finish up this conversation by asking you if I were to take a typical company of let's say 25 branch offices and wanted to engage your services as a coach and a mentor coming in, how would that be done, and what exactly would you do with a company that size?
Well, there's a process that I deliver, and it's called the sale. I position myself, of course, is from my experience in this industry, but it's a sales performance management system, and it's a 5-step system that starts with the assessment of the organization and of their people, and then we design a strategy for taking that company where they want to go, and then of course we deliver it. We implement through training and through position analysis and through other products and services and tools that we have. We deliver the strategic plan. And then the two big keys that I think are really that differentiates the Brooks Group and our services and what we do is the reinforcement piece. If we're going in and we're developing individuals and we're training people, that information has to be reinforced, which we have a whole strategy that delivers reinforcement of the knowledge and the learning. And then the fifth piece to this strategy is the accountability. That if a company is looking to enhance their performance and change habits and behaviors of their people and to establish high-performance 21st century sales team, they have to hold their people accountable to the system, and we certainly have the tools to do that. So we have a comprehensive system that we deliver to our client base.
Great. Well, look, I enjoyed very much talking with you today, Paul. I thought your comments were profound, obviously, and as I said, I encourage everybody that has a chance to read this article. At some point, we'll make it available if they get in touch with us in a couple of weeks. But I want to thank you again, and we'll keep in touch.
Wonderful, John. Thanks for the opportunity. Have a great day.
Nice talking to you too, Paul.
Okay.